Hello, I'm Dr. Sam and this is Dr. Sam's Health. In the past multiple videos I've been talking about weight loss, and I think today it's time to try something new. Actually, a lot of people ask me how to gain weight, not to lose it, how to gain muscle. Usually these are young men who want to build a little bit of muscle, who want to look more athletic, who want to have more presence, look stronger. Personally, I believe that it's a relatively easy thing to do, though at the same time I've met quite a few people who struggle with gaining weight, including some fitness trainers. So I reflected on this subject and I realized that I've got quite a few tips for you that you can use to gain weight effectively, gain muscle. Let us start with the core tip, core advice. If you want to gain muscle, if you want to build muscle, you need to stimulate the muscle growth. And the best thing to do this is obviously exercise. So the very first advice for you would be to start exercising. And it has to be some sort of heavy lifting resistance exercise. Resistance exercise is well known to cause a boost of testosterone, which in turn will increase your muscle mass. In general, exercise is stimulating muscle growth through testosterone and other mechanisms. Tip number 2, engage in multiple joint exercises, compound movements, squats, deadlifts, bench presses, cleaning presses, anything that engages multiple muscle groups, multiple joints, bigger muscles. That is something that will give you this boost of testosterone and boost of muscle growth. Tip number 3, aim for safer exercises. If you are not really an experienced athlete, and likely you are not because you are skinny, right? You are risking your health, you're risking actually injuring yourself during compound movements such as squats, for example, because it's very difficult to do squats properly and it takes months for a newbie to actually learn how to do these exercises right. So my main recommendation is to go for safer versions of compound exercises. My personal pick would be leg presses for 2 reasons. Reason number 1, it is actually very easy to have proper form when you're doing this leg presses in the machine. And reason 2, I've got a very interesting history about leg presses. I actually gained a lot of weight when I started doing leg presses when I was around age of 19-20. I started doing them and I remember that I gained around 10-12 pounds just in 1 month. Tip number 4, use heavy weights, but at the same time do not aim for your 1 rep maximum. Your goal is to increase the volume of exercise. So there is a nice sweet spot when you are exercising with around 75-80% of your 1 rep maximum and you are able to do 4 or 5 sets of 10-12 reps each, and you are completely exhausting your muscle. And that, in my opinion, would be the optimal regimen for building muscle. Tip number 5, when you're doing your exercise, aim for explosive concentric part. So if you're doing bicep curls or bench presses, try to do a really fast, explosive concentric part. That will allow you to engage fast twitch muscle fibers, which are big and they require a lot of energy and they grow fast. Tip number 6, after you've done the explosive concentric part, try to slowly lower the weight when you're doing the eccentric part of the exercise, because your fast twitch muscles are already engaged, and when you're lowering the weight, they're still working, but by extending the time frame, the duration of the eccentric part, you're making this muscle fibers to work more. Tip number 7, give yourself some rest time. When you're not building muscles when you are working out. When you're working out, you're just giving your muscles some stimulus to grow. And you need to give them some time to actually build new proteins, to replenish energy sources and so on. My recommendation for a new athlete, for someone who is not really an experienced athlete and not using any supplements, would be to work out maybe 2-3 times a week, not more frequently than that. Tip number 8, use splits. meaning that you are training different muscle groups using different compound exercises for the same muscle groups on different days, so that in the end of the day, you would not work out any given muscle group more frequently than twice a week. Again, the main point of this is to make sure that your muscles have enough time to recover and you do not overtrain. Tip number 9, do not waste your time on isolation exercises. At this point, what you want to do, you want to bulk. You want to build plenty of muscle mass, and in order to do this, you have to get back to the original tip of mine, using compound exercises. If you will spend too much time on isolation exercises, you will literally waste the time, energy, and effort on these exercises, and you will not spend enough energy and effort on larger compound exercises. It will just simply take away from them. Tip number 10, do not even bother to do any kind of endurance training. Endurance training is an amazing kind of aerobic exercise. It conditions your cardiovascular system, but in terms of muscle gains, it's pretty much useless. And I would say there are quite a few people who would say that you might even lose weight if you're doing aerobic exercise, a lot of it. Actually, all you have to do is just look at marathon runners and you will see how skinny they are. And you can look at sprinters. Sprinters are amazing in terms of their physiques. Usually they are very muscular, very athletic. And that is why I'm talking about compound movements, explosive exercises, and large volume of exercise. But at the same time, it should never be an endurance exercise. Now we're moving to nutrition. And my tip number 11 will be, you need to eat a lot. You need your nutrients, you need your energy to build muscle, and you need your proteins, amino acids that you would use to build the muscle. Which brings us to the next tip, tip number 12. You need insulin response. When we've been talking about insulin resistance, about weight loss, we're trying to avoid insulin response at all costs. But at the same time, insulin is one of the major hormones that are stimulating effectively your tissue growth and incorporation of nutrients into the tissues. In fact, one of the major factors for muscle growth is something that's called IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor. And that is the main reason why I would recommend aiming for insulin response. And in order to have this insulin response, you need to consume carbohydrates. I thought I would never recommend taking in carbohydrates, but actually ingestion of carbohydrates will cause this insulin response, as well as protein, by the way, and it will stimulate your muscle growth. Tip number 13 is an extension of tip number 12. Not only you need this insulin response, you want this insulin response to last longer. So my recommendation would be to have multiple meals a day, and each meal should have enough protein and some carbohydrates in it, so that you pretty much having this insulin response, insulin reaction throughout your day. That will definitely ensure that your muscles are growing and they have enough energy and enough protein, structural blocks for building muscle. Which brings us to the next tip. Very simple, sleep a lot. When you sleep, your body produces growth hormone, your body rests, and you allow yourself some time for recovery. You need good quality sleep and you need enough of it, usually 7-8 hours a day. And the last but not the least advice is not to stress. I know it might sound odd, but what happens when you stress is your body releases cortisol, which is one of the major catabolic hormones. It will stop your muscle growth. It will definitely start breaking loss of tissues to make sure that your body has enough nutrients and energy to actually respond to any perceived stressful situation. So these were my 15 tips on how to gain weight. I can promise you, I can almost guarantee that if you follow these tips, you will definitely gain a lot of weight. The one thing I cannot guarantee is that this weight will be mostly muscle. You actually need to find a point of optimal balance between your physical exercise, stimulation of muscle growth, and the energy intake. In my experience, most of the people when they're bulking, they cannot find this spot, it's actually very difficult to do, and it's kind of a variable balance spot. So almost invariably you will gain some fat with your muscle, which is fine. In a while, when you believe that you gained enough weight, you can actually start working on either losing specifically fat, or you might decide to continue bulking because you wouldn't care about some fat mass. I hope you appreciate these pieces of advice that I have given to you, and I hope that you will be able to use them, incorporate in your routines in order to actually achieve your goals if you are going to gain some weight. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, make your comments, ask your questions. I'm always happy to answer them. Don't forget to check out my website, drsamshealth.com. You can ask me questions here and on my website, and obviously we've got quite a few interesting things for you on the website. We are not limited to YouTube alone. So that's it for today. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you soon in my next video.